Picture this. You're standing in a medieval town square. Merchants shout prices, children run between stalls, but everyone's attention is fixed on the center. A man's head and hands are locked in a heavy wooden frame. He can't move, can't shield himself, can't escape. This was the pillory. It didn't need blades or fire to hurt. The crowd did the work. People threw rotten food, mud, and insults while the victim stood helpless. Hours passed, and muscles cramped, the sun burned, and shame dug deeper than pain. When the wood was finally opened, the man's reputation was broken long before his body recovered. Before we continue, I want you to comment below with where you're rewatching from and what time it is right now. It's always incredible to see people from all around the world connected through these forgotten stories. And if you enjoy this kind of history, strange, dark, but fascinating, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The pillory turned punishment into public theater. Everyone saw it, everyone remembered it. But if locking someone in wood wasn't enough, there was another tool waiting. One that mocked a person with iron strapped to their very face. The shame mask. In some towns, the punishment for gossip, lying, or simply speaking out of turn wasn't the pillory. It was the shame mask. These were heavy iron cages fitted over the head, shaped to make the wearer look ridiculous. Some had donkey ears, others had pig snouts, and a few even had long metal tongues to mark a talkative mouth. Once the mask was locked on, the person was marched through the streets or made to stand in a square. People laughed, pointed, and shouted. The mask did the rest. It robbed the person of dignity, turning them into a living joke. In some designs, spikes pressed against the tongue or cheeks, so even trying to speak caused pain. Unlike the pillory, which trapped the whole body, the shame mask worked on the face alone. It was punishment you carried with every step, a mark that everyone could see. And once your neighbors had seen you in one, they never forgot. But some devices went beyond shame. They crushed the body itself, forcing people into positions that nature never intended. The Scavenger's Daughter. The Scavenger's Daughter was an iron frame invented in Tudor England, and it was the complete opposite of the rack. Instead of pulling a prisoner's body apart, it crushed it inward. The victim was forced into a crouch, knees pulled tight to the chest, head bent low, and arms clamped against the sides. Once locked in, there was no moving. Blood rushed to the head, veins swelled, and the pressure alone caused agony. Breathing was hard, muscles screamed, and the body quickly began to give way. It didn't need ropes or fire. The design used the body's own weight as the weapon. Prisoners held in this position for hours often collapsed when released, too weak to stand. Some fainted, others were left with lasting damage to their joints and lungs. Unlike public punishments such as the pillory or shame mask, the Scavenger's Daughter was used in private chambers. It was designed to break people quickly, not through laughter or shame, but through crushing pressure. And while this device folded the body in on itself, others used iron spikes to make even sitting down an act of unbearable pain. The iron chair. At first glance, the iron chair looked like a throne. But instead of cushions or carved wood, every surface, seat, back, arms, and even the footrest, was covered in iron spikes. A prisoner was strapped down tightly so that even the smallest movement drove the spikes deeper into their skin. Sometimes fires were lit underneath the chair, heating the metal until it burned. Victims could be left there for hours, bleeding slowly and too weak to move. The pain wasn't only from the spikes, but from knowing there was no escape. The iron chair was often kept in chambers where prisoners could see it before questioning began. Many confessed without ever being strapped in. Just the sight of the chair, bristling with spikes, was enough to terrify. Unlike devices built for public shaming, this was meant for silence and control. A tool of fear, not just pain. And if spikes weren't cruel enough, another device focused on spreading agony from the inside out. The Pair of Anguish. The Pair of Anguish was small enough to hold in one hand, but its design made it one of the cruelest tools ever imagined. It was a metal object shaped like a pear, with 4 curved petals connected to a screw. The device was placed in the mouth, or sometimes in other openings depending on the crime. Then the screw was slowly turned. As it tightened, the petals spread apart, stretching the body from the inside. Soft tissue tore, bleeding started, and the pain became unbearable. Unlike the iron chair or pillory, the Pair of Anguish wasn't meant for public display. It was used in dark rooms where screams were the only witness. Victims had no way to resist once it was inside. Its cruelty came from its simplicity. A small turn of the screw changed discomfort into permanent damage. Even if someone survived, the injuries left lasting marks, and while the pair worked by forcing the body open, another device pulled it apart piece by piece, stretching limbs until nothing held together. The rack. The rack was one of the most feared devices in history. It was a large wooden frame with rollers at both ends. A prisoner's hands were tied to one side, their feet to the other. Then the rollers were turned, pulling the ropes tighter with each crank. At first, the body stretched painfully, muscles tensed, joints strained. But as the rollers kept turning, shoulders and hips dislocated, ligaments tore, and bones snapped. Victims often fainted from the pain, only to be revived and stretched further. Even if someone survived, the damage was permanent. Dislocated joints, torn muscles, and shattered bones left them crippled for life. The rack wasn't just a tool of pain, it was a symbol of power. Its size alone filled prisoners with dread the moment they saw it. Some never had to feel the ropes at all. Just being brought into the chamber and shown the rack was enough to make people confess. It didn't rely on shame or spectacle. It relied on raw force, making the human body break under its own limits. But where the rack tore people outward, another device forced them down onto a single sharp point, turning stillness into torture. The Judas cradle. The Judas cradle was a wooden frame topped with a sharp pyramid-shaped point. Prisoners were tied with ropes and slowly lowered onto it, their full weight pressing down. The design was simple but devastating. Every movement caused fresh pain, so even breathing became a struggle. Ropes could be adjusted to increase or ease the pressure, meaning the torment could last for hours or even days. Some victims had weights tied to their legs to make the suffering worse. What set the Judas cradle apart was its mix of pain and humiliation. Victims were often stripped before being placed on the device, leaving them exposed while others watched. It wasn't only about torture. It was about breaking a person's dignity. The cradle didn't need blades or fire. Its cruelty came from time and gravity, slowly wearing a prisoner down until their body and spirit collapsed. And while this device attacked the whole body, some others were designed to target one part alone, leaving scars that marked a person for life. The breast ripper. The breast ripper was a device created specifically to punish women, often those accused of witchcraft, adultery, or other crimes tied to morality. It was made of iron claws, sometimes shaped like tongs, and in many cases heated until they glowed red. The claws were then pressed into the chest and pulled away, tearing flesh instantly. Some versions were fixed to walls, with women chained in place before being dragged forward onto the spikes. Others were handheld, giving the torturer full control over how much damage was done. This punishment wasn't only about causing pain, it was about shame. In societies where a woman's body was linked to her honor, the breast ripper destroyed both at once. Even if someone survived, the scars were permanent and impossible to hide. The device shows how torture often had a double edge. Not just physical suffering, but social ruin. It reminded everyone watching that punishment could reach the most personal parts of a person's identity. And while the breast ripper scarred individuals, other devices worked on a larger scale, breaking the entire body in front of a public crowd. The wheel, also called the breaking wheel, turned execution into a public event. It was a massive wagon wheel, sometimes mounted on a post, other times laid flat on the ground. The condemned was tied across the spokes, arms and legs stretched wide. Then came the breaking. An iron bar or hammer smashed bones one by one, starting from the limbs and moving inward. Shattered arms and legs were sometimes twisted through the gaps in the spokes, leaving the victim bent at unnatural angles. In many cases, the person was left alive, tied to the wheel, as birds circled overhead and crowds gathered to watch. The wheel was punishment, warning, and theater all at once. People from across the town came to witness it, turning suffering into spectacle. For rulers, it was a way to show control, proving that anyone who defied the law could be crushed in both body and spirit. Unlike other devices hidden in dungeons, the wheel stood in the open for all to see. Its power lay not only in pain, but in the memory it left behind. And while the wheel turned death into a public display, one final device transformed suffering into a twisted performance that echoed like an animal's cry. The Brazen Bull. The Brazen Bull was one of the most infamous torture devices of the ancient world. Built entirely of bronze, it was shaped like a life-sized bull with a hollow chamber inside. Victims were locked inside through a small door, and a fire was lit beneath. As the metal heated, the chamber turned into an oven. But the cruelty didn't stop there. Pipes were built into the bull's head so that the victim's screams echoed out as animal-like roars. From a distance, it sounded like a beast bellowing in fury. The Brazen Bull was designed not just to kill, but to impress. Rulers used it to make a statement. Power displayed through art twisted into horror. Crowds could watch, hear, and even smell the punishment. The spectacle was meant to scare anyone who dared to challenge authority. Unlike smaller devices meant to wound or humiliate, the Brazen Bull was a full display of control. It combined fire, sound, and death into one unforgettable performance. And now, having walked through these 10 devices, from shame masks to iron bulls, you can see just how far human imagination has gone when it comes to punishment. Each one wasn't just a machine of pain. It was a message, a warning, and a tool to remind people who held power. That's it for today's dive into history. Tell me in the comments, which part stood out to you most and why? Also, share where you are watching from and what time it is right now. I love seeing how this community connects across the globe. And if you enjoyed this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next story.